Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody from around the world, and welcome to day two of the Henry Stewart Dam Industry Week 2023. Today is all about CPG and retail. Thank you to all the attendees from across the globe for joining us to celebrate all things digital asset management. We also want to thank our sponsors for supporting the event. Please visit them throughout the conference via the exhibition tab to find out more about their product offerings and what they can do to help you today. During our sessions, we encourage you to chat with fellow attendees and, of course, make the most of this experience. Submit your questions using the Q&A for those who've seen any of the webinars I like to do. We like to have a lot of dialogue in this, and I think that's what really drives a lot of value for all of you, as well as the speakers that are joining us today. You can use that on the right-hand side of the screen. Use the chat to get the conversation going. I'd love to see, where everybody's coming from right now. So feel free to join the chat now and throw out where you're from or where you're coming from out there in the world. We like to see that as well. Don't forget to navigate to the lounge tab. There'll be some real-time networking that you can do with your peers as well. If at any point you need any assistance down from Henry Stewart, please use the chat bot on the bottom right of the screen. Hopefully you're seeing my right. I'm not sure if it's actually my left that you're seeing. And then finally, we hope to see some of you at the in-person events this year. We have DAM events taking place in London in June, New York City again in September. And so now it's time to get on with the show. Well, why don't we introduce and have Jen Sunday come on as I introduce Jen. Jen, do you want to come on screen? Excellent. And Jen, I'm going to take my screen share down as it is, and you can bring yours up, which is perfect. And as I introduce, for those who don't know, Jen Sunday, she's an amazing person. Jen is from Gore Associates, and today she's going to talk about how is the health of your digital asset supply chain. A really good topic for us to actually start on today when we think about it, whether or not you have a dam or not. I think this will be very apropos. So Jen, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Neil, for that introduction. Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming to the presentation of How is the Health of Your Digital Asset Supply Chain? My name is Jennifer Sunday, and over the last 12 years, I have been working in DAM closely with vendor management and IT, and have experienced all areas of DAMs, especially for large corporations. From administration, governance, planning, building, and integrating, I have touched all parts of the software lifecycle. And over the last few years, I've had the opportunity to expand my skills by integrating DAMs with product information management systems, content management, project management, and digital selling platforms. So before we get into the presentation, if you would like to put in the chat, who likes to watch movies? I like to watch movies. I just never get to because I have a 3-year-old. So have you ever had to stop watching a movie in the middle of it? Of course, being a mom, my daughter takes precedence over the TV sometimes. And one day I was watching a movie and had to stop right when it was getting good, close to the end. And I had to put on Paw Patrol. I'm sure people can relate with this. And days later, I finally was able to watch the movie, try to find it and finish it, but I couldn't remember what platform it was on. I was frantically searching for this movie through Disney Plus, Hulu, Netflix, Peacock, and of course, I could not remember the name of this title. I was so frustrated and thought, okay, how else am I going to find this movie? So I searched online for the actor, but of course, I'm horrible with names. So I remembered a video that I saw that actor was in, and I went to go look for that. And then I got sidetracked and was adding all these other movies that they were in to my watch list. And so finally, I got back on track, started using the search function, only to find out that I now had to pay for the movie. And at this point, I was like, oh my gosh, how hard is it to find this movie and watch it? Why does it have to be this hard? I had 15 minutes left of this movie and I spent 20 minutes trying to find it. And then I realized this must be what it's like for anyone who has ever had to search for a digital asset. And wouldn't it be nice if there was one location where I could go find a movie with certain criteria and find what I'm looking for? And luckily for digital assets, there is an answer. digital asset management. Now, before we get to the health of your digital asset supply chain, let's start with some definitions and set the stage. So what is a digital asset? And no, I'm sorry, we are not talking about Bitcoin here, so please bear with us. Digital assets are the essential building blocks of today's digital world. Digital assets are images, videos, graphics, or any other digital file and the metadata that describes these assets. And metadata is data that provides information about other data. So what is the digital asset supply chain? Well, this is something I've actually coined the term of and is made up of 4 parts. And I really want to understand the digital asset supply chain, not digital supply chain as a whole. So specifically for digital asset management, it is the first set of processes involved in the creation of digital assets and their metadata. So that's the first step in the digital asset supply chain. The second, as well as the dam itself and importing those assets into the dam, is the integration with dam and other software systems. The third part is the optimization and distribution of digital assets to those downstream channels. How do we get it there the right way, the first time, the best way, and at the best quality? And then the last part, and not least, is the governance and administration of the digital asset lifecycle. And this is where we are going to focus through all 4 parts today. So what is DAM? Well, DAM is the blend of software and business practices to manage these many digital assets. And there's a word that has been associated with DAM, taxonomy. And I'm using the word taxonomy today because I want to kind of talk about the beginning of DAM and where it started. So think of taxonomy as the system of classification or a category or folder structure for holding your assets. Think of the structure like a brick and mortar library. Fiction, nonfiction, and other genres serve as the taxonomy within a library. The same way it would serve as classifications specific to your DAM instance. And DAM started as software that stored and organized assets. Back when it first started, it combined with taxonomy and the metadata to leverage searchability. As the DAM practice grew from a standalone application to the center or the heart of the digital asset supply chain, it became the single point of truth for the digital asset lifecycle. DAM now flows digital assets from its center or heart to other systems, like blood would flow through the body by ventricles, veins, and circulate back to the heart. DAM is where assets are integrated into the system, and they flow to the other integrated systems, and then sometimes returns information back to the DAM. So since I like movies and we started off with a movie, I want to share a little clip with you. I hope you like Top Gun. It's one of my favorite movies.
Where'd he go? Hollywood said, where'd who go? Man, he's laughing at us right on the radio. He's laughing.
So just like Hollywood said in the movie Top Gun, where did who go? We often ask ourselves the same questions about our digital assets. Whoop. Where do they go? Why can't I find them? And how do I get them when I need them? Now, have you ever seen a desktop look like this? How do you know which one is the newest version? And how many times have you had to recreate your work? P.S. These are warning signs that your digital asset supply chain is not running optimally. If you've ever asked yourself any one of those questions, the best solution is to put them in a DAM, especially if you take into consideration that the average employee spends more time looking for digital assets or trying to recreate digital assets than providing them in a concise and time-saving manner. That's a lot of time. Now, the first step in assessing your digital asset supply chain is to ask, where do your current digital assets exist in your organization? Here are some questions to ask your team and really think about where they are. Where does your current content live? What are your version control around your current content? What tools are you currently using, and are they meeting your needs? Where are the gaps? How much time are you spending manually moving content from one system to another? And yes, it does happen a lot. And how do you control data integrity issues? We want the best, latest, and greatest. And how do we manage that and make sure everyone gets that same asset? And how can you better service your customers? We want to make sure that we are meeting their needs so that they are willing to use our information the right way the first time. Every digital asset is worth money. And to your company, it can help drive sales. In an acquisition, it actually increases the amount of money your company is worth. It takes time and money to craft a well-branded asset, and that cost should not be lost. Companies put a lot of effort into marketing and creative teams, and their output should be shared, communicated, and used more than just by the core team. Now that we are aware of how valuable our digital assets are and why we need to take care of them, let's talk about where can the digital assets go? The answer, they can go anywhere. From product information management system to content management, project management, ERP or enterprise resource planning, customer relationship management, and identity management platforms. DAM can build the bridge between your websites, email marketing, sales support, social media, and that's just the beginning. But that's not all. Now we know where they can go. Let's see who can leverage the assets. Almost everyone in your company, including sales, licensing, corporate, and legal, even legal, can benefit from using the DAM, especially when approving content usage rights. So now let's get into the meat and potatoes of today's session. How does the DAM in the digital asset supply chain deliver value? And I'm going to walk through the 7 steps on how to do the health check. So the first step is purpose. Are you trying to reduce duplicative work costs, improve customer experience, or maximize asset utilization? If so, we want to know who our users are and how they're going to use the system. What is the best practices we need to know when they are trying to get the content out of the system that they need? And what kind of data do you need to support the system? The second step is to plan. What is the plan for the digital assets? Where do you want them to go? And how do you want them to be used? What is the digital asset supply chain roadmap? What systems need to be connected to get that plan to work at its optimal level? And what is the strategy behind connecting all of these systems and how the data is going to flow? And does it align with the purpose? People. The third step is people and collaboration. Invest in your users and invest in a DAM team, especially a DAM admin that will be responsible for driving the growth and adoption of the system. It is important to know who is going to support your DAM, who will train your users, who is accountable for system issues and enhancements, who will lead the project when issues arise and you need when you need answers, and who will be the administrator, who is going to wear that DAM administrator hat and be the responsible person for your DAM's growth. And 4, governance. Now, this is one of my favorite parts. Lay the ground rules for how your system can be used. How can it not be used? And outline policies, procedures, and permissions. It's very important in this step to set a cadence for communication and involve stakeholders throughout the entire process. Communication is huge, especially through process and purpose. Besides investing in the people, this is the most important part to guarantee success. State what your dam is. What is it used for? How are they supposed to be using it? And again, the rules and policies and permissions. This is also where you can have a community or a governance council to handle change management. How are you going to make updates to the system? And how are you going to grow your dam? Focus on process alignment, workflows, data mapping, documentation, and training. With documentation for all of those process alignments, this will help secure your space in the dam world. Now, fifth is where I like to go. I like to integrate with technology. This is where I've been focused in the last few years, and this is my favorite part. DAM is no longer a standalone system, and it needs to be connected to other systems to drive consistency, automation, and the speed of the source of truth data to the market. What are the right tools to reduce complexity and deliver value to your users? How do you get those assets from one point to another quickly, concisely, and correctly? How does each piece of the pie scale and enable business efficiency? How are you making this better for your DAM team, your end users, and every other system and user of those systems together? How is that user experience? Is it better or is it worse? Where are the pain points? How do we look at this as a holistic view? And how does each tool perform as a cohesive unit? Again, looking at that digital asset supply chain roadmap. How are we going to implement? Are we going to need third party? Can we have developers do it? What are the tools around that? And then also, how are the systems designed to support the data structures? I know that's a lot of information. Step 6 is after we do all of this, we want to measure and know how are you going to hit your goals and how is the DAM delivering your value? By understanding the investment made in the creation of the digital assets, this will help you determine the worth and need for up-to-date content. The better content going to your end users the first time, this will help drive sales, support your services, and increase customer satisfaction. We want to measure user satisfaction by gathering data before we make a change and after. We want to use analytics to see what assets are being used. Are they being used too much, too little, not at all? Do we have the right access set to them? And what is your return on investment? And for you specifically, what does success look like? And the last step to do the check in your digital asset supply chain is improve. There is always room for improvement. DAM is ever evolving and constantly changing. And if your DAM is not changing, that is another warning sign that your digital asset supply chain may be in danger. Focus on reducing pain points. Will it help if you add an enhancement? How do you increase user adoption? And how do you evaluate your implementations? Is it working effectively? Are there any issues or stop points that you need to address? And always go back and review your strategy. By working through these steps and implementing the steps that I have outlined, it will increase the health of your digital asset supply chain. Next, I do want to touch on reduce, reuse, recycle the DAM way. So a great way to think about how the DAM can reduce, reuse, and recycle digital assets is by streamlining content creation workflows, using derivatives or different sizes of the same asset, and repurposing content. We want to reduce the amount of money and time recreating the same assets, streamline those processes, reduce wasteful time management, reuse the same assets in multiple different sizes in many different locations. Some dams allow for this to happen using different sizes within their system, and that helps reuse the same content without having to recreate it or resize it. And recycle the assets whenever possible. Are there any parts of that asset that we could use for another marketing campaign? Or do we need to keep them in an archive or a deactivated state for future use where we can pull them back out again, recycle them into another marketing campaign, and not have to recreate the wheel from the beginning? Now, just as a recap, I know I gave you a lot of information, but I do want to touch on a few different things, just tweaked a little bit for ways to increase your health of your digital asset supply chain. So the first one is step number 4, establish a governance practice. Governance is very important into the DAM world with policies, procedures, and permissions, as I said before. Collaborate with your teams. Communication is key. Audit your assets. How many versions of those assets do you have? And are any outdated, or is the branding old and need to be replaced? How do you control access to your system? And set guidelines around that. Permissions are important for your DAM to make sure you're sharing the right content with the right people at the right times. Set those standards of use, set the standards of how to use your assets, and then always focus on some data and look at what the data is telling you about who and how the data is being used. I'm sorry, who and how the assets are being used. Second, metadata management. This is huge, and this takes a lot of time and effort. But if you focus on starting a standardization of file naming conventions across all platforms, you'll be able to track and see the asset move from one platform to the next downstream channel. And that way, it'll be easier to make updates to the same asset in the DAM, and it'll flow to those other channels without having any issues. Align on metadata tagging and mapping processes. Metadata drives search and findability. Mapping those tags and those metadata properties are huge in order to find what you need in the right location at the right time for all systems. And use change management to manage data, metadata changes, and requests. It is very important to have a process around how to update your data from one system to the next. And if you don't, and someone just puts in a different word for the same name, so for example, if you're using size and you use SML and somebody puts in SM for small in one other system, it's not going to align. So really focus on the change management, how we are going to make the change in every single system to provide consistency across the board. And the third way is to automate workflows. Leverage the software integrations, leverage the scripts, gather analytics, improve the pain points, focus on removing the blockers from your users, and really focus on version control. So as I started, I have to conclude with a movie. I have to conclude with another movie quote. When Scarlett O'Hara asked the tearful question, "Where shall I go?" to Rhett Butler in 1939 film Gone with the Wind, Rhett said, "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn." And no, I didn't mean to cuss. It's DAM for us. But in today's world, if Scarlett asked, "Where should the digital assets go?" Rhett would have said, "Frankly, my dear, they should go in the DAM." Thank you so much for your time. And also,
Jen,
if you would
amazing.
like, just as an FYI, here's the QR code. If you want the presentation right now, go ahead and grab a screenshot of it, and I'll leave it up for a few moments so you can get that. But go ahead and you'll get the presentation right in your phone.
Jen, leave it up for a few minutes for sure. And in fact, leave your presentation up because I think there's a lot of things that we can reference. First of all, kudos to you on the coming up with the whole, frankly, my darling, I don't give a damn is in asset management. Like you said, let's not cuss today about it, but I love it. Bravo on that one. I'm almost upset with myself. I didn't think about it.
You can steal it. Just reference me. It's fine.
That's right. Hashtag Jen Sunday. So, Jen, a couple of questions coming in along the way, and I have a few for you as well. I think it's an interesting one that you talked about. One of the things is maybe, can you try and give some sort of difference or definitions between digital supply chains and digital asset supply chain?
Sure. So when hearing the term digital supply chain, it commonly focuses on like manufacturing organizations that are looking for integration planning or execution, logistics, procurement, smart warehousing, etc., while delivering their digital products, which is similar to what we do, but the digital asset supply chain is specific for the DAM processes of creating the digital assets and their metadata, focusing on how the dam integrates with other systems, the optimization and distribution of those digital assets, and the governance and administration of the digital asset lifecycle. We are focused on DAM, so make it specific to DAM. That's why it's digital asset supply chain. It's what we do at the core.
Great. And you talked about some really interesting health checks, which I think are excellent to do. We should be doing these probably monthly or quarterly, depending on how often you want to be doing them. What do you think is the most important step in the health check?
Oh, if I could only pick one, it would have to be governance, because it sets the ground rules for how the system is to function. And that includes, again, policies, procedures, and permissions, and people. So there's 4 P's in that one. And from the start of governance, you can grow the value of your digital asset supply chain. Governance kind of sets the stage for how you're going to grow and develop your DAM practice.
Great. Well, let's take a couple from those watching us today. So these will be coming in for you new. Nicholas asked, you said, quote, focus on the data, back on one of your slides. How are you focusing on the data when it comes to searching in your DAM? Nicholas is really worried about failed searches and other most used search types. When you think about focusing on the data when it comes to search, what do you think of, or what are you looking for when it comes to that health check?
So one of the things that I do, or I have done in the past, is take a look at how your users search. So it actually goes back to step 1, right? And how are the users using the DAM? What are your use cases? How are they searching for that data? And then from there, look at what they are seeing or not seeing in their search results. Say that you are looking for a small red jacket. I'm making this up as I go, so bear with me. And you have small and you have jacket, but you don't have red. And specifically, they're looking for that color. And they need it because of say the person in there has an extended contract for that asset. And that's why we want to use the red one. If they're searching small red jacket as a whole, what comes up? Do we need to color tag ours and use that additional metadata field or adjective to provide those search results? And that's one way that you can do that. Also, testing with the users is very good to find the differences between what they're searching and what they're finding, to do kind of like I forget what the word is called, but basically looking at having a few users walk through how they use the system and then taking notes from there.
Excellent. Jen, if you don't mind me adding on that, once I remember I'm talking with an organization who had a realization that their key values in words that were relating to the organization, one of them being ethical or being sustainable, and the DAM manager actually, as part of their kind of health check, did searches and realized they didn't have any assets tagged with the actual key visions or words that were there, and this was the big one for them, where then they realized they didn't have assets to support these statements that they were making. And so it drove again, what should we be creating in terms of content, and B, how should we be digitizing, or how should we be tagging or adding these for appropriate search, which is great. Another person asked, how do you build file naming convention? You just talked about that earlier. What are things that you should be taking into consideration?
Character limit, region or language as well. And also, what is important to your specific company? I could give you multiple versions of file naming conventions, but it's really what you need to convey in up to 26 to 250 characters. I forget the limit, but it should be around like 156 characters at max for a file name. So what do you need to convey in that amount of time that would lead you back to that asset? And that is really something you have to dive in with your company. Do you need to know what language it is because you're a global company? Do you need to know what the SKU number is because it's a product? Or do you need to know the reference number in your project management because that's how you're going to drive your file naming convention through all of your systems? So it really depends on where you are and what you need to do for your specific company. Those are some good ways to
Great
start.
answer. Thanks, Jen. I find file naming conventions actually a hot topic. And if for those in the chat, and I can already hear Henry Stewart going, what's he doing now? For those in the chat, jump in on this one. I think Henry Stewart, there should be a debate on file naming conventions. Are they needed or not anymore? I think that would be an excellent debate when you consider it. So depending on the system, the technologies and everything like that, you may not need file naming anymore. It's a really good hot topic that we can debate in New York City. So maybe that could be a fun session. Jen, maybe we'll get you up there as well for that one. What's a Henry Stewart presentation with Neil Bilo? There's a little bit of controversy. All right, let's move on to the next one with it. This is a good question. Somebody asked, how do you find the balance between finding the right dam and tight company budgets in the current climate? Right. And this is a big question for a lot of people. Jen, I'll ask you first, and I can add some thoughts as well.
Sure. So I think one of the things that we need to look at is don't look at just today. You're going to need to know what you're going to need down the line. You need to really think about the strategy and the overall roadmap. And it's very important because if you select one based on exactly what you need today, you're going to be out of it before you implement it. And you really need to focus on what is going to work for you, not what they say they can do, not who tells you and touts you and markets what they can do. Really go in first and foremost. I would say set up a governance committee. At your bare minimum, tell me what you need. Write it down so that any company that you look at, if they don't meet your criteria, what is it that you need at bare minimum? And then look where their growth plan is. Ask them where they're going to go with this platform and what they can deliver for you in the future. Because today is gone. Tomorrow is what you're going to need to do. And really focus on not just today, not just meeting your needs, but if you really want to get the most bang out of your buck, you need to look ahead to the future and make sure that that platform can last you for 2 or 3 years. If you're a small company and need to get the most out of it, I would take that approach and look at what you really need. Go ahead, Neil, please. Any other input?
Sure, Jen. So just in the meantime, why don't we pull down your QR code? If anybody does need a copy of the presentation, Henry Stewart can also provide one for you. But the other thing I would do for the person who asked that question, go to a lot of the vendor websites. Mm-hmm. The suppliers, including those who are sponsors of today, have really good ROI calculations on these. This is their world, right? To help you understand how to create value. And just starting with those simple things, you had it right up on one of your first slides, Jen, 9.5 hours, mm-hmm. right? 9.5 hours a week being wasted, right? Looking for things. Or when we think about the waste of how many assets we create, but because this one's on my desktop, I use it over and over again. And then somebody in the chat, I just want to get the correct name here, so my apologies for it. I'm just looking for Anne in the chat said our legal team did an audit this year and they passed because of the management via the dam. Don't forget about that legal component that goes into the ROI, because in fact, in today's world, that's extremely litigious, and where we're using assets over and over again, hopefully we have the right sign-offs or we have the right approvals to do so. This could be actually a major point where you're both saving money from reusing it, and also saving money against lawsuits. So we want to make sure that we're doing this properly and tracking things properly as well. So very, very interesting from that standpoint. All right, a couple last questions here. So it looks like somebody kind of heard my question about the controversy. Somebody asked, what should be captured in the file name versus metadata? And that's actually the entire part, I think, of a good controversy. But Jen, maybe why don't you jump in here? What do you think is the difference between file names and what you should put in metadata?
So file names is, and I'm sorry, Neil, but I'm going to have to go on the other side of you, but you have to have a file name in order to make sure that you have a file. Okay. So you have to have something there.
Yeah.
Image one, image two is not acceptable at this point. You have so many assets coming through your system. You need to find a way to have the asset searched, but also meta tags can be part of the information in your file name. And that's okay. It's not taboo to have that. And the reason why is because the same data that you put in your file name for you to search through your systems and make sure that that naming convention stays through your downstream channels is going to be some of the metadata that you need to tag to make sure that it goes to the right places in your workflows. So it's okay to have a little bit of both. For example, if you have SKU number underscore region underscore language, and this is just an idea, this, don't take this as like the end all be all, please. This is just an example.
This is the Jen Sundays version of how you should always name file.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying, as a quick example to give you ideas, you're going to need to know the region. You're going to want to tag it for your language because you don't want English going into Japan and putting that content into that location. So you're going to need to have it in your file and your meta tags. And it can be any meta tag properties that your business chooses because it fits your needs. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Your business, your needs, focus on that, not what Jen says.
I like what Jen says, though. I think the other part, Jen, to add to that is a good damn system should be able to read that then and also create metadata, hopefully, right? So if you do have a structured naming convention, perhaps, your damn vendor can take that, apply it as metadata automatically instead of you having to add it in all the time. So there's other opportunities that you can derive from it. Sometimes it's also ones where sometimes make the file name searchable. So now it becomes something you can search on or search within. And then other ones, as some people have noticed, this allows you to have a name for when you download it or even change it on demand, which is really fantastic. And I'm loving how many people are commenting on this, Jen. You'll have to, I know that you can't see it, but it's really great. Feels like this could be a hot topic at Henry Stewart, New York, where it could be a good battle. We'll get everybody split across the room and see how it goes against.
Do we need to wear colors?
Right, we have a couple more. That's right. I'm for file naming or I'm against it. That'll be a fun one. Let me see here. So there's an interesting one. Charles noted, sort of a question, more of an observation, but a good one probably to end. He has at least 5 silos, 5 different places of which this content is, because they've grown out of acquisition, like a lot of companies have, or they have historically old systems or anything like that. Any challenges, any thoughts that you can have towards the challenges when you have all of these silos on how do you map against the supply chain, just like you talked about, hence why you said the file naming?
So I think there's very good value in here in breaking down silos, and it's very hard to do. But the first thing that comes to my mind is if you establish a change management process, and I know I've talked about change management in the past, so forgive me if I reference this because it's near and dear to my heart. But if you have a process in your governance committee, anytime an acquisition happens, that you're going to take this and transform it into your set of standards, that's going to provide you the best value. And then you're also going to be able to put it down in your specific workflows, because you will have a process set to say, okay, when we have an acquisition, these assets are worth money. They're going to come through here. We're going to rename them. We're going to be able to tag them efficiently. We're going to leverage what they currently have in their systems, and we can see what that is and see if there's any good value in what they have and maybe updates there. Again, DAM is always changing and growing, so that's a good potential. But really focus on the process first. What do you have to have in your systems? And then what does that acquisition company coming in need to have to align with your current data? And that's where I would focus. It all goes back to governance.
Jen, I love it. All goes back to that. Jen, thank you so much for kicking off our first session today. What a fun experience. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Up next, what do we have? Up next, we're here from Acquia, and actually in our Tech Lab session, and we'll see you over there soon. Plus, also don't forget to check out the community feed. Let other attendees know that you're here on online. For Jen, excellent presentation. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.